Welcome back to Mark chapter 8. I was just going to tell you what I had for Dalmanoutha, which is the place where Jesus briefly pops in by boat and listens to the Pharisees complain and pops out. Here we are, Mark 11 and 12. Why does this generation seek a sign? They were seeking from him a sign from heaven to test him. Semeon apartu uranu, peras nontes auton, testing him. What have I got? I did some Googling a while ago, and I found a guy who wrote a book, one of these fashionable books about Roman army and things that happened around Galilee. He's got something about weeping of widows. It was very, very thin. But in the comments section, I wasn't even able to read his reasoning. You'd have to buy the book. But someone in the comments section posted a pointer which actually is a lot more useful. And I should have thought of it myself. It refers back to manna in the wilderness, feeding hungry people in the wilderness. The people were hungry and God fed them. And all the accounts, there is also a very great deal of grumbling. And he pushed me to this text actually, Numbers 11. And the phrase that he fixed on is, here we go. It's Numbers 11:9. I don't know if you can see that. Yeah, when the dew fell upon the camp in the night, the manna fell with it. And here in step, even if you have no Hebrew like me, and you're just sounding out the lexical words, Yarad came down. Hatal, the dew, ul, on Hamakana, Lila, Yarad, Man, Aliu, or something. Yeah, okay. Came down the dew in the morning on the camp at night, and came down the manna on it. Okay, so the manna comes down on the dew. The dew is connected with the manna. Here's the word for dew, hatal. It's not the same as dal, and one of the problems with playing these kind of language games between Aramaic and Greek is that the letters and the sounds simply do not match up, and there's no well-established way to exchange those letters. And so we go from tal to dal, which personally I am convinced by dew. And he takes this phrase, hatal al hamakene. So tal al hamakene, dew on the camp. And that's what he thinks is the origin of Dalmanoutha. Or you could just, I would keep it one other possibility. Honestly, I don't know how Hebrew works. There's all kinds of rhymes and internal rhymes. And if I really understood how the music of or the prosody or whatever it is of Hebrew was functioning, I'd be able to say what's a legitimate speculation and what's just silly. But anyway, we've got these two words, man, haman, which is manna, and hatal, which is dew. And you can make whatever you can from that. And definitely, I think we are being pointed back to this text. And it's interesting that the Israelites have already been receiving and eating manna for some considerable time. And then there's this episode of grumbling. And Mark follows exactly the same pattern. First the feeding of the 4,000, then the Pharisees perversely asking for a sign. The other text that has manna, which you might prefer, as I say, it's an inexact science and I am not qualified to science it. But I would say this text, Exodus 16:15, which is a similar version of the same. When the people of Israel saw it, they said to one another, "What is it?" For they did not know what it was. And Moses said to them, "It is the bread that the Lord has given you to eat." So the origin of manna comes from this. What is it? It's difficult to get my... and he saw the sons of Israel. The sons of Israel saw and said, man to his brother. Okay. Man who, meaning what is it for? They did not know. Mach, normally the word for what is ma with a ch, what it was. Anyway, that's what they said. So it's a pun that gives the name of the manna. Is Manhu, Dalmanoutha. It's the best I can do. I can't tell you specifically, but I am sure. And it is the bread that the Lord has given you to eat. I think both of these feedings are clearly and the name Dalmanoutha are clearly directing you back to these texts. That's my belief, which I expressed here. I'll copy this. I put this on Fishers of Evidence's little video on this chapter with a few other things, but that's the best I can do, and I will move on. Let's finish the chapter. 8:13. So new location. Kai Ephes autus, and having left them, Palin embas, he again embarked, and apelthen eistoperan, and he went to the side. As I say, I always interpret this to another place. Kai epelathonto labain artus. You know what? I've already done this, haven't I? They forgot to bring bread. Yeah. Beware the leaven of the Pharisees and the leaven of Herod. Yes, sorry about this. Dialogues deste. In the Septuagint, they like the word, it means grumbling. Gongle, something. Having eyes to see, and he broke the 5. Yes. This puzzle. Oh yeah, I can't answer this. I broke the 5 loaves to the 5,000. How many baskets did you pick up? 12. When I broke the 7 for the 4,000, how many baskets? 7. Do you not yet understand? No, we don't. And everyone, if they're honest, remains puzzled about this. It's very likely there's something we're missing. When I first read this as a teenager, I was told it's obviously something to do with numerology, or gematria, possibly. Gematria is all about Hebrew letters having numerical quantities, and so one word can be equivalent to another, etc., etc., etc. And almost certainly lost. I mean, yeah, it's interesting for me that the 2 miracles, 5 and 7, the starting loaves, they add up to 12. I mean, David asks for 5 loaves, and we normally associate with there being 12 sacred loaves for the 12 tribes. I don't know what to make of it. When I read it recently, I was reading with a heuristic of Jesus as a solar figure, and that works very, very well. Like the sun, he rises, peaks, and his life declines. And that's do you remember the little girl passing the John the Baptist's head on a golden platter to her mother? I thought that can be the centerpiece of the mid-year. And yes, it could be. I'm speculating that there are 12 hours in a day, and the 5,000 was at the 5th hour, and that the 4,000 is at the 7th hour. So they're on opposite sides. They're parallel, but opposite sides of midday. And just as in the first case, Jesus feeds 5,000 with 5 loaves and has 12 baskets left over. The second time he has more loaves, fewer people, and had fewer leftovers. But I'm sure there is something more specific there, which I'm not seeing, and possibly we never will. But I do commend the idea of Jesus as this kind of solar figure. Okay, I think that's all I can do here. I'm gonna move on and finish the chapter. Mark 8:22. Kai erkonto eis Bethsaidan, and they come to Bethsaida. Something like house of hunting. Here it says house of fishing. Yeah, and they come to Bethsaida. Kai ferusin autoi, and they bring to him Tuflon, a blind man. Kai parakalusin auton, and they beg him hina autu hapsertai, in order that he might touch him. We're seeing this a lot more. We didn't see it at all at the beginning of Mark's Gospel, and then we saw it with the woman with the discharge, and since then we've been seeing hapto more. And they ask him to touch him. So a blind man. Kai apilabomenos tes kairos tu toflu, and having taken the hand of the blind man, exenenken auton, he led him exo tes komes, out of the village. Tai ptusas eista omata, and having spat into his eyes, epithes tas kairas autu, and placing his hands on him, eperota auton, he asked him a tiblepes, if you can see. He asked him, can you see? Do you see? As you'll see, this lines up with the healing of the deaf and dumb man. Remember, Kophos Mogilalos. And Jesus put his fingers in his ears and then spat and touched his tongue. So a lot of the same words being used here. Do you speak? Do you see? Enablapsas, and having looked up, he said, this is interesting, blepo tous anthropous, I see people, hoti, because, okay, host dendra horo, peripatuntas. This is normally translated as I see men, but they are walking, but I see them walking around like trees. And certainly, yeah, you can defend that meaning. I see men like trees. I see them walking around. Yes, host dendra, but trees don't normally walk around. Yeah, okay. Yeah. What are we to make of this? Well, people normally say that his sight has come back in parts, and initially it's fuzzy. They actually look like trees, but they are walking around because they're people. Eta, then palin epitherken taskeras. Again, he placed his hands epitus ophthalmus autu on his eyes. kai diablepsen, and he saw clearly, or he opened his eyes wide, kai apekatester, and he was restored. Yes, kathistemi is when something breaks down, and apokathistemi is when something's unbroken down or put back together. Kai eneblepsen, and he sees everything, hapanta, telaugos. Clearly. We'll go with clearly for now. What can I say? Okay, there are lots of interesting things about this. First of all, in the previous miracle, it starts exactly the same way, the healing. Kai anablepsas, pros ton uranon. But there it describes Jesus, and Jesus looking up to heaven. But in this case, it's the man who looks up to heaven. And he says, I see people... yes. Actually, Hottie could go over there. He says that I see people, I see them walking around like trees. Yeah. I mean, one interpretation of this I had recently is that they're angels. Elkosites and various angel literature of around this period or earlier. Angels have human form, but they are massive. And they could be like trees in that way. Yes, it's interesting, and it plays into my idea of solar decline, that Jesus' powers are actually waning, that he takes 2 tries to heal the man. You might notice Blepo is getting a real workout in this chapter. Blepeter, horater, blepeter, mind, beware, the leaven of the Pharisees and of Herod. And then here we've got just lots of blepo in its different forms. Tiblepes, do you see anything? And then anablepsas, the man, looking up, that's pretty clear. He says, blepo, I see men walking around like trees. And Jesus put his hands on it again. And this one, diablepsen, I'm not really sure what the force of dia is here. Again, or properly, I mean, yeah, he saw better. Yeah, and eneblepsen, he looked upon everybody. Telaugos. I mean, so we've got 4 different versions of this verb with different prefixes. It's not quite clear. This word is one of the most intriguing in Mark, telaugos. It only occurs in one place, and Matthew has left it out. I mean, to see something clearly, I would have gone with orthos, which was the word we used for how he was speaking, the dumb man in the previous miracle. I would have gone with orthos, but there are other choices as well. If you want the sighty word, phaneros, that would be clearly, that would be nice. But instead Mark's chosen this very odd word, which nobody really knows what it means. It may mean far shining, far beaming, but I would beware of that, because the far Aug gives us our word I and the German word I, and I'm happy with that. But this tel, that's not telos. Tel and telos, they might look like they're exchangeable in English, but they are not in Greek. So I'm not happy with far shining, far beaming, luminous, far seeing. Right, algae has to do with daybreak, apparently. I didn't know that. Okay. The truth is, I don't know. It's a jolly odd verb, that's all I would say. And it doesn't really appear to occur anywhere else. But do your own research, that's all I can say. Okay. kai apestelenauton, and he sent him a soikonautou to his home, saying, Merde eis ten komen eis elfes. Do not enter into the village. Okay, presumably he didn't live in the village then. He sent him to his home, but said, don't enter the village. So like the previous miracle of the Kophos Mogilalos, secrecy is implied. Similarly, in that case, Jesus took him apart. He was brought by people, but Jesus takes him away where other people can't see. And that happens here as well. And there's the instruction not to tell anyone. Well, in fact, he healed his tongue in the previous case and he instructed him not to tell anyone. Here it's a blind man, and he's telling him, I suppose, not to be seen. I don't know. Okay, but clearly those two miracles are linked, absolutely clearly, by the language that's used. And if you're interested in chiasmus, which a lot of people are with Mark, the way things are arranged in a chi, A, B, C, C, B, A, that kind of structure, then you'll use these as kind of binding points. Okay, moving on. Kai exelthen ho Jesus, and Jesus went out, and his disciples, eis tas komas, into the villages, Caesareas tes Philippu, of Caesarea Philippi. Okay. Kai ente hodoi, and on the way, eperota, he asked to Smathetas, his disciples, saying to them, legonautous. Yes, again, with my solar thing, or with the chiasmus, it feels like we had this conversation immediately before we had the story of Herod killing John the Baptist, because people were saying who Jesus was, and one of the answers was, he's John the Baptist risen again. Okay. Tina melegusin, hoi anthropoi enai. Who do people say I am? Whom do people say I am? Hoi diepan autoi. Here we go. Weak aorist again. And they said to him, saying, oh, that's even weirder. They said to him, saying. This is the same verb, actually. This is a weak aorist of lego. Okay. And they said to him, saying, that quotation, Ioannan tu baptisten, John the Baptist. Some say John the Baptist, and others say Elijah, Elia, and others that you are one of the prophets. Heis ton propheton. And he asked them, kai autos eperota autus, and he asked them, whom este, but you, what about you? Tina me legete enai, whom do you say I am? Apokrithes ho Petros lege, and replying, Peter says to him, Su e ho Christos, you are the Christ. You are the Christ. This is kind of the midpoint. I think some people who love chiasmus would like to make Christos and this revelation, this statement, in fact, by Peter, as the climax centre point of the mega sandwich that's Mark. I wouldn't like to comment, but I'm sure people want to do that. And of course, it's got a chi. It's got a chi, Christos. You are the Christ. Yeah. I mean, it could be that was what they didn't understand. I mean, that's one simple way of understanding it. The miracle of the loaves is that, and there was one loaf in the boat. They had no loaves, but they did have one loaf, it said. And maybe that the miracle of the loaves is that it shows that Jesus is the Christ. That's certainly a conservative, perfectly sensible reading. And kai epitimesin autois, and he rebuked them. Yes, he rebuked them. Hina medeni legosin periautu, in order that they might tell no one about him. He rebuked them or sternly charged them. Epitimao, this is a verb we've been seeing throughout as one to watch. Okay, ka erxeto, and he began didaskenautus, to teach them hoti, that it is necessary day ton huion to anthropu, it's necessary for the Son of Man polopathain, to suffer many things, and apodokimasthernai, and to be rejected, hupo ton presbyteron, by the elders, kai ton archiero eon, and by the high priests, and ton grammateon, and by the scribes, and apoktanthernai, to be killed, and metatrace hermeras, after 3 days, anasternai, to be raised up, and after 3 days to rise again. Yes. I always misremember this as according to the scriptures, but of course there are no scriptures that say this, which frustrated the early Christians. You know, when they finally got proper access to the Old Testament, which they hadn't had, they expected it would be all about this, all about Jesus suffering and being rejected by the various groups and being killed, and after 3 days arising. And there's really nothing like that in the Old Testament, which is very frustrating. But John has according to the scriptures and something similar like this. Yeah. And this is a statement of Christianity. It's the first time this affirmation, or whatever we call it, this epiphany is laid out here at this midpoint. Kai paresiai ton lokon elale. That is odd. Paresiai means publicly. It's kind of the opposite of in secret, katidian or lathrai or whatever. And he was speaking this saying to them plainly or openly. Kai proslebomenos hopetros auton, and Peter, having come to him, erxato, began epitimon autoi, to rebuke him. It's the first time in Mark's Gospel that epitimao has been used where Jesus is not the subject, and it's extremely unusual, and it clearly marks a reversal. That Peter rebukes Jesus. Hoder, but he, Jesus, epistrophes, having turned around, and idon tus mathertas autu, and seeing his disciples, epitimersen, he rebuked Peter, and he says, Hopaga opiso mu, get thee behind me. Yes, get behind me. Isn't that odd? Yes. Get behind me, Satan. It sounds like a quotation. It sounds like something we should recognise. But we don't. This is where the first place it's used. Get thee behind me, Satan. Hoti uphrones. Okay, you do not think or set your mind tatu theou, on the things of God, Allah, but taton anthropon, but on the things of man. We haven't seen phrono like this before, I don't think. Yes, it's the only time in Mark. Yeah, okay. Kai parakalisamenos ton oklon, and calling to him the crowd, suntus tois mathertais, with his disciples, apanautois, he said to them. Okay, so there's an exchange with Peter, who do you say I am? And then with the disciples, and now with the crowd. I could be imagining this, but check that. It seems to me that that's the transition. It's first Peter who makes a revelation, you are the Christ, and then it's this description to the disciples, and now it's the crowd. Tes thele opiso mu. If anyone wishes behind me, elthein, to come behind me. Yes, to come behind me just means to follow me in this case. Aparnesasto. This word becomes important in Christianity. You see it in Paul's letters. Deny. Yes. And this is let him. It's imperative third form. Let him deny himself. Auton. Let him deny himself. And Irato ton stauron, and take up his cross, and akolutheto moi, and let him follow me. Yes, it's odd that opiso mu, behind me, is exactly the same word as we had here. Get thee behind me, and that was in a much more negative context, that Satan shouldn't be in front. Satan must always be behind. But here he's calling people behind me to come after me. And this is a theme, the theme of following. Come behind me, follow me. This will be a theme of the second half of the book. But it's odd that it's the same words. It's just odd. Yes, so calling the crowd with his disciples, he said to them, if anyone wishes to come after me, let him disown himself, let him deny himself and take up his cross and follow me. And of course we've got cross, which makes no sense to anybody at this stage. Obviously it makes sense to Christians, but yeah, it's the first use here. And Jesus didn't mention, obviously he didn't mention, he mentioned that he would be killed and rise again. He doesn't mention a cross. Hoskar ean thele ten psukenautu sosai apolese auten. For whoever wishes to save ten psukenautu, his life, apolese auten, will lose it. Hoste an apolese, and whoever loses ten psuken autu, his life, heneken mu, for my sake, and heneken to euangeliu, and for the sake of the gospel, so say auten, will save it. You know what, I'm reading a lot about chiasmus, and this is a good example. Chiasmus is just something that you see everywhere. In many ways it's not magic, it's just good writing. It's part of what makes the saying so pithy. For whoever would save his life will lose it, but whoever loses his life for my sake and the Gospels will save it. Okay, so it works just as well in English. So we've got so say apolese. So A, B, apolese, and so say, yeah, B, A, B, B, A. And that's a very, very simple example of how chiasmus works. As I say, it's not unique to Mark, but people make spectacular claims for really extraordinary structural chiasmi. Okay. Tigar ophele anthropon. For what does it profit a man, kerodeasai, to gain ton cosmon, the world, holon, the whole world, kai zermiotheanai, ten psukanatu, and to forfeit his soul. Yes, to forfeit is normally a financial forfeit, or a penalty, to forfeit his soul. Gain the whole world and forfeit his soul. Forfeit his life, I should say, yes, psuke. It's very unclear, I suppose, depending on what branch of Christianity you belong to. But for me, it looks like psuke means life, And we can use the word soul in English that way, but other people might think of it as soul, forfeiting your eternal soul. Tigar doi anthropos. For what might a man give antalagma as an exchange tes psukes for his soul? Again, this sounds like a financial transaction when you leave a deposit for something or something like that, or indeed a ransom. We may be on the way to that. For what might a man give in pawn for his soul, perhaps, in return for his soul? Hosgar an, for whoever episkounthe, whoever, yes, this word shame, iskouno, something like that. It's very common in Greek. We haven't seen it in Mark yet. For whoever is ashamed of me and two semislogus and my words, ente genei, taute, te moi kalidi, kai hamartoloi, in this generation which is adulterous and sinful. Gosh, that's a funny adjective, if that's an adjective. Yes, okay. In this, I suppose it's because it's feminine. Yeah. Whoever is ashamed of me and my words in this adulterous and sinful generation, kai ho huios to anthropu, also the Son of Man will be ashamed, episkun thesitai, of him, hotan, when he comes, ente doxe to patros autou, when he comes in the glory of his Father, metaton angelon, ton hagion, with the holy angels. Yeah, so the Christ stuff is now very much front and centre. This eschatological Christ, when he comes in the glory of the Father with his holy angels. And that's it. I think I'll leave it there. Thank you.